What if I told you that Chevrolet once built an engine so violent, so absolutely devastating, that they refused to put it in their own advertising? What if I told you that this engine was so powerful, Chevrolet actually tried to discourage customers from buying it? Today I'm going to expose the truth about the 427 L88, the engine that Chevrolet built in secret, sold without fanfare, and spent decades pretending was just another big block option. This isn't just about horsepower numbers. This is about corporate fear, underground racing dominance, and the most successful cover-up in muscle car history. By the end of this video, you'll understand why original L88s sell for more than most people's houses, why Chevrolet's own engineers called it the monster, and why GM spent 50 years lying about what it could really do. This is the story they buried, the engine they were afraid to unleash, the 427 L88. To understand the L88 conspiracy, you need to understand 1967. The muscle car wars were escalating beyond anything Detroit had imagined. Ford had unleashed the 427 side oiler. Chrysler was terrorizing drag strips with the 426 Hemi. And Chevrolet? They were losing. The 396 Big Block was respectable, but it wasn't enough. Chevrolet needed something nuclear, something that would end the horsepower wars permanently. So they turned to their most secretive division, the one that built engines for NASCAR, for Can-Am racing, for applications where failure meant death. But here's what they don't tell you. The L88 wasn't developed for street cars. It was designed as a pure racing engine that Chevrolet would reluctantly offer to the public under legal pressure from NASCAR's homologation rules. They had to build it for the street to race it on Sunday. The development team was led by engineer Denny Davis, working under Dick Kynath. But these weren't just Chevrolet engineers. They were former military aircraft designers who understood power outputs that could literally kill inexperienced pilots. They brought that same military precision to the L88 project. Here's the buried truth. The L88 program actually began in 1965, 2 years before public release. Chevrolet was secretly testing prototype engines that produced power levels they knew would terrify their own executives. Early dyno sessions were conducted at night in locked facilities, with results classified above the security level of most GM board members. The test engines were so violent they destroyed dynamometers. Chevrolet had to build specialized testing equipment just to measure the L88's output. They knew they had created something that transcended normal automotive engineering, something that belonged more in aerospace than on public roads. Internal memos from 1966 reveal the truth. Chevrolet knew they were creating something dangerous, something that would embarrass every other manufacturer so completely that it could destabilize the entire industry. The L88 wasn't just more powerful than the competition, it was more powerful than anything Chevrolet had ever built for public consumption. So they made a decision that would define the L88's legacy forever. They would build it, but they would hide it. They would offer it to the public, but they would make sure almost nobody knew it existed. The conspiracy was born before the first L88 ever fired. Now I'm going to reveal the specifications that Chevrolet buried for over 50 years. The numbers that were so shocking, Chevrolet's own executives refused to believe them. The L88 displaced 427 cubic inches with a 4.251-inch bore and 3.76-inch stroke. Standard big block dimensions. But everything else was revolutionary. The block itself was a special high-nickel casting that could withstand pressures no street engine was ever designed to handle. The compression ratio hit 12.5 to 1. Let me repeat that. 12.5 to 1 compression in 1967. When most engines ran 9.5 to 1. This wasn't just high compression. This was aircraft engine territory. This required racing fuel. This required knowledge that most mechanics didn't possess. But here's the secret Chevrolet hid from everyone. The official horsepower rating was 430. That's what appeared on the option sheets, in the advertisements, in every piece of Chevrolet literature. 430 horsepower. It was a lie. Internal dyno sheets that surfaced in the 1990s revealed the truth. The L88 produced 560 horsepower at the flywheel. Some units tested even higher. Chevrolet had deliberately underrated the engine by 130 horsepower to avoid insurance company attention, government regulation, and competitive response. The cylinder heads were works of art. Rectangular ports that flowed 320 cubic feet per minute, more than some modern race engines. The intake valves measured 2.19 inches, the exhausts 1.72 inches, valves so large they barely fit in the combustion chambers. The camshaft was equally radical. A solid lifter design with 0.520-inch lift and 316 degrees of duration. This wasn't a street cam. This was a racing profile that made the engine idle like a top-fuel dragster. At 1,000 RPM, the L88 sounded like it was trying to tear itself apart. The intake manifold was an aluminum tunnel ram design that looked like it belonged on a funny car. The carburetor was a massive 850 cubic feet per minute Holly that could flow enough air to choke a small aircraft engine. But Chevrolet went further. They removed the fan shroud, eliminated the heater, deleted the radio provisions. They were telling customers, this is not a street engine. This is a race car that happens to have license plates. Yet somehow, Chevrolet convinced the automotive press that 430 horsepower was the real number. The greatest underrating in automotive history became accepted fact. Here's where Chevrolet's fear turned into active deception. By 1968, word was spreading through the performance underground about the L88's true potential. Drag racers who had stumbled onto L88 Corvettes were running times that shouldn't have been possible. Professional drivers were whispering about horsepower figures that made other big blocks look like economy engines. Chevrolet's response? They made the L88 harder to buy. First, they removed it from all advertising. You couldn't find the L88 mentioned in brochures, commercials, or dealer literature. Customers had to specifically request the option, and dealers were instructed to discourage the sale. The order code was RPOL88, buried in a sea of alphanumeric combinations that meant nothing to casual buyers. No flashy names, no marketing campaigns, no promotional materials. Chevrolet was actively hiding their most powerful engine, but they went further. Chevrolet required customers to delete the radio, the heater, and the air conditioning to order an L88. They were making the car deliberately uncomfortable, hoping to scare away street customers. The real conspiracy emerged in 1969. Internal Chevrolet documents revealed that executives were worried about government regulation. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration was beginning to investigate high-performance engines. Insurance companies were raising rates on muscle cars. Environmental groups were protesting automotive emissions. Chevrolet knew that if the L88's true horsepower figures became public, it would trigger regulatory responses that could kill the entire performance market. So they maintained the fiction that it was just another big block option. Meanwhile, the racing community knew the truth. L88 Corvettes were dominating Trans Am racing, setting records at Daytona, embarrassing factory teams from Ford and Chrysler. But Chevrolet's public position remained the same. 430 horsepower. Nothing special, just another option. The cover-up was so successful that most automotive journalists didn't discover the L88's true potential until the 1980s, 20 years after production ended. But Chevrolet couldn't suppress the truth forever. In the underground racing world, the L88 became legendary. Drag racers who could afford the $947 option price, equivalent to $8,000 today, were running quarter-mile times that embarrassed factory drag cars. Professional engine builders began studying L88s like archaeological artifacts. They discovered casting techniques that wouldn't become common until the 1990s. Machine work so precise it required tooling most shops didn't own. Assembly methods that revealed Chevrolet's racing division had been building these engines by hand. By the 1970s, used L8s were selling for more than new big blocks. Knowledgeable buyers understood they were acquiring something that couldn't be replaced. Something that represented the absolute pinnacle of American V8 development. The collector market manipulation began in the 1980s. Certain dealers started hoarding 88 Corvettes, not to restore them, but to control the market. Prices began climbing beyond rational levels. Original L88s that sold for $6,000 in 1975 were commanding $50,000 by 1990. Today, an original L88 Corvette sells for between $400,000 and $800,000. Some rare examples have exceeded $1 million. Why? Because collectors finally understand what Chevrolet tried to hide. The L88 wasn't just powerful, it was perfect. Modern engine builders who specialize in L88 restoration operate like a secret society. They guard their knowledge, protect their suppliers, and share techniques only with proven craftsmen. They know that a properly restored L88 will outperform engines built 50 years later. But here's the most shocking part. Current GM executives still won't discuss the L88's true specifications. When automotive historians request access to original dyno sheets, they're told the documents are unavailable. When journalists ask about the horsepower underrating, they get redirected to public relations departments. The conspiracy continues today. 55 years later, GM is still protecting the secret of their most devastating engine. So what does this mean for modern performance? The L88 proves that American manufacturers have always possessed the technology to build engines that would shame modern supercars. They had the metallurgy, the engineering knowledge, the manufacturing capability to create automotive perfection, but they chose market control over innovation. They chose corporate safety over engineering excellence. They buried the future to protect their quarterly profits, and they're still doing it today. Think about it. If Chevrolet could build a 560 horsepower naturally aspirated engine in 1967, what are they hiding now? What modern power plants are sitting in corporate research facilities deemed too powerful for public consumption? What revolutionary technology is being suppressed to maintain insurance company relationships and government compliance? The L88 conspiracy isn't just about one engine. It's about a system designed to control innovation, limit progress, and keep consumers buying incremental improvements instead of revolutionary breakthroughs. But knowledge is power. Every time someone learns about the L88's true potential, Chevrolet's deception weakens. Every time you share this story, you're exposing decades of corporate manipulation. If this video shocked you, subscribe right now, because next week I'm revealing the most explosive automotive conspiracy of all time.